Yeah, good morning, Roger here, Tone Freaks. I had a chat with Ranjan this morning about the news. I was saying I was looking forward to seeing John Ward's blog on yesterday being a very bad news for Brexit. And John's blog is entitled Countdown to Dictatorship. The Masquerade Continues. And it talks about amongst other things, in the UK, Boris Johnson finally purged Dominic Cummings, Brexit's toughest clean break supporter. The usual Whitehall suspects are now briefing against David Frost, Britain's tough stance negotiator with Brussels. The PM's mistress, Carrie Symonds, is seen as victorious in all this, and her longer-term motivation are now in very serious doubt. Both Cummings and Lee Kane were genuine leavers. Boris didn't plump for leave until the last minute, and Symonds herself voted to remain. We should ignore all the dry-iced drivel about personality clashes. This purge was about Brexit, or rather the perpetual and unconstitutional desire of the unelected state to row back towards the EU Titanic, the Eutanic, as John calls it. The mainstream media in both countries, however, continue to detest the two things the majority of citizens want, Trump and Brexit. Very interesting. I watched earlier, if it's still open here, let me just, that was it there actually.
Vented.
Oh, that's not a problem to explain at all.
Right, hold on, I'm going to do what I was going to do. History. It's going to come down here. Here we are on this one here. I'm just going to stick this in. Well, actually, I won't put it in the description. This is an interesting interview from 1971, and it's Enoch Powell and Dr. Jonathan Miller on the Dick Cavett show, and they're discussing Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech. What's interesting is that Enoch Powell is saying that he speaks the unspoken thing that everybody else is feeling, a little bit like the little kid in The Emperor's New Clothes who says the Emperor's naked. And then Jonathan Miller then goes on to talk about how older people represent a alien group of people, alien to young people and young people's, and a burden on young people. This is what he's saying. And they talk about euthanasia. Now, I did another blog earlier, and this idea of euthanasia is present in another thing I'm trying to upload at the moment, which is the Alex Jones and the Tim Pool podcast that was banned on YouTube the other day. And effectively what they're talking about is death panels or bioethics panels, allocation of resources to medical care for the old, for the infirm, eugenics, euthanasia, all of those real unpleasant and shocking connections back to Nazi Germany. Now, if we just, here we are, turds all the way down. It was a bit of a sort of a general thing, this blog, based on the discussion I had with Ranjan yesterday, which I might just stream immediately after this one. But on the eugenics business, I highly recommend this talk by Dr. Daniel Robinson, the late Dr. Daniel Robinson. This given at Princeton, and it's on the Sharvo case, and it's entitled Sharvo and the Shibboleth of Privacy, and it's talking about euthanasia, about compulsory organ donation. There's a question at the end about organ donation and compulsory organ donation, and Daniel Robinson did the great courses in philosophy, which I studied that course in depth 10 years ago now, and I'm very grateful that I did, and I regard Daniel Robinson as my philosophy tutor, if you will, because that's where I got most of the framework that I went on from to study other areas of him and another guy called Judd Evans. So anyway, that's that. So in terms of those themes, but this theme of a totalitarian, technocratic overclass that will not brook discussion of any other point of view, that the Jonathan Miller Enoch Powell discussion on the Dick Cavett show in 1971, well worth watching. But some of the things I'm alluding to in this chat with Ranjan, which I'm going to play now, just going to put that on full screen and then get it to play.
Your time today. I feel like doing something. I'm going to do something in a minute. So yeah. What about you?
I'm looking forward to John Ward's blog yesterday. Today he made a cryptic message saying today is not a good day for Brexit. Look out for the next post. And I've been looking out for it ever since, and it's not appeared yet. But I shall be very interested to see what that says. I noticed a tweet earlier. I'm not sure how true it is, but Carrie Simmons apparently worked for something called the Ocean Group, which is a foundation or one of these quangos, in which, according to this tweet, Hillary Clinton is involved. And so it said Carrie Simmons works for Hillary Clinton. And of course, Boris Johnson is due to give some big speech, apparently, about
conservation,
building back better, and the Green New Deal and what have you. And quite a lot of conservative people are sort of saying, look, have you forgotten why people voted for you? I mean, essentially, the reason he won the election in December was that the Red Wall constituencies wanted Brexit. So, you know, that should be obvious to anyone. And the reason people rejected Jeremy Corbyn is because of the wokeness, the political correctness, the wishy-washiness around the question of Brexit. And Johnson, of course, used his very strange language in the debate with Corbyn when he said there's an intonation in the argument of Jeremy Corbyn's position on Brexit. That was shortly after the "Are you in a ditch?" comment. That it was Etchingham who was the compere of that debate, and it's a pivotal moment because the December election was about Brexit, and of course now the November election that we've just had with Donald Trump, that was about policies, about making it again. Can be loosely, forget about the wall, forget about everything else, but that's really about NAFTA, the North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement, which was the beginning of the liberalization of the American economy after the Berlin Wall came down. Now, the Berlin Wall came down. When was it? Was it in the? It was
89, October 89.
Right. Okay. And so then you had all the Yeltsin stuff, the attempted coup against Yeltsin, or as painted as that. Now, I guess if you go back and look at it, it's probably some sort of color revolution. And then you had the liberalization of the Russian economy, which led to a fall in the birth rate, lots of poverty, lots of people dying, lots of the sort of stuff that's likely to happen with this great reset post COVID-19 idea of building back better, right? So it's kind of, I mean, the milestones along the way of this agenda, you know, are there for anyone that cares to go back and just read what's written on them as you go. And then, so the thing I want to do today, which I haven't done yet, is I want to re-listen to it's a 2-hour lecture by Viktor Etminov, who's a Russian academic. It's on my YouTube channel. I put it on there so I could get the English translations to come up. And quite a number of people have watched it. But he says a number of things in there which are very, very interesting. And then there's also from the early or mid 90s, maybe it was the 80s, there's a video that's garnered quite a few views. It's been put up by an Indian guy, I think, in India. And it's this Love Letter to America. Have you come across that? He's a KGB defector who wrote a book under the pseudonym, I think it's Hoffman or something. The guy was assassinated, I think, eventually. But Love Letter to America talks about the subversion techniques of really color revolutions by the old Soviet state, how they went about trying to undermine the institutions of democracy and all the rest of it. Now, anyone that doesn't think that Boris Johnson is undermining the institutions of British democracy, particularly the idea of how Parliament works, isn't paying attention. Of course, he's not alone in his crimes of that type. Theresa May was a case in point. So was Cameron in the first Cameron administration with Clegg. And then, of course, the master at whose knee they all study was Tony Blair. And then we get back to, you kind of have to jump back a bit then and go to Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher and what were they all about? And is Donald Trump more of a Reaganite, Thatcherite kind of character? Because I think Margaret Thatcher, whilst she was a neoliberal, she only up to a point, because she was actually a nationalist, the position that she took on the euro and the federalization of Europe, as expressed as well by Norman Lamont in his opposition to the euro, the European state mechanism, all the rest of it. When was the tipping point, if you like? So between Reagan and Thatcher, Reagan introduced the Star Wars idea, and that was in opposition to the SALT treaties, strategic arms limitation treaties and stuff like that. And it's thought that the arms race that engendered caused the Soviet economy to really struggle, because they just basically, it was guns or butter, and they went for guns and not butter, and it caused all sorts of problems. And then the wall came down, and then Russia was liberalized. And the same things were done in Russia as were done in Chile under Pinochet in '73. The relationship between Thatcher and Pinochet is a complicated one. And like I say, I mean, as one steps back, like Ed Burke said, 50 years behindhand, you can actually start to see the emanation of the present discontents, if you like.
The hand of history. The hand of history, Roger.
Exactly. So no, I'm going to watch Etimov today. I'm going to watch the Love Letter to America again. I've read it, and I've seen the interviews, but some guys put them. It had over 1 million views. I mean, it's so I'm going to watch those this morning. Then I'm going to have a sauna. I'm going to go and put our sauna on in a minute. A Sunday morning sauna. And I've just done a reading of Epictetus's Enchiridion. I did that live online. It's quite interesting. He's talked about bathing, and of course he's talking about Roman baths and how people could, which was, the Roman bars were similar to a British pub back in the day. That they were centres of social discourse and what have you.
Bit like Twitter. Bit like Twitter or Skype.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
I'm sorry, Roger. I couldn't help myself. Not exactly a group call, is it? Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, I feel much better for having read the Enchiridion, because I've read it loads of times, and I think I might also reread Osho's essay on ego, the false centre. And it's that time really. I mean, it's a Sunday as well, so kind of cleaving to some first principles of gaining control of one's own centre, as it were. Just because I do think that the onslaught that people have been subjected to, the onslaught of propaganda of the last 9 months, has been, it's wearing. I mean, I can't speak for other people. I know it's worn me out. I mean, I just and of course, it's a question of trying to just sort of say, well, what is the word? Is my reality? How are things really? What are things really? I watched last night a guy called Carlson. I watched his podcast, an early one from 2015 with Joe. And Carlson is a guy who has written books jointly with what's the guy called now? Ex-journalist that written lots about ancient monuments and stuff. I always forget his name. He did he's the other guy that spoke at the band Rupert Sheldrake talk on TED. I always forget his name. Anyway, I watched that yesterday, and that was interesting too.
What was it about?
Sacred geometry, about astrology. What I mentioned yesterday about the dawning of the age of Aquarius and stuff. So it's all of that stuff, and it's about metrology, the basis of the thing about numbers and the things about maths, about geometry even. Epictetus is quite interesting to read on that, because confusing the thing for the thing in itself, and geometry it applies to as well. My own particular insight into that came from a guy called Eric Dollard, and Eric Dollard mentioned in one of his electricity lectures about Maxwell's equations. He mentioned that the electronic field is always at right angles to the direction of the current. Okay, and that's the basis of the spiral universe. If you look at the if you look at that as a phenomena, right, and then look at things like Euler's number, right, okay, they're all related. And then people sort of say, oh wow, Euler's number, it's absolutely everywhere, but it's an artifact of the mathematics describing one simple thing about the electronic universe, and that is that when you have a flow of electrons, which we call a current, that the magnetic field within which it flows is at right angles to the direction of the current always. And so you've got a 90-degree right angle. And when you get into Maxwell's equations and you look at that, or if you look at Euler's number and all the rest of it, and why it becomes ubiquitous, okay, and we find that these ratios everywhere, okay, all of those ratios, okay, this is a substantial truth claim that I'm making now. The reason they are ubiquitous in the universe as far as we can see is because of that simple, phenomenal, basic truth, and it is a basic truth, that a current flows at right angles to the magnetic field. And then that opens up all the questions about field theory and wave theory, wave particle duality, and all of that stuff. Okay, I think it all boils down to that. David's writing a book at the moment called RGB, which is about Maxwell's theories of light. You know, red, green, blue. So again, I'm not sure. I've got to ring David up actually and see how he's going, because I saw an early draft of some of the chapters, but I'm really excited to see what David's how he's getting on with that, because I think it's going to be really, really good. And I think part of the awakening of human consciousness, Ranjan, and I really do think this, is that people have been open to other explanations of some of the phenomena that we still don't understand. Okay, so there are dominant narratives such as, you know, what happens at CERN, what is the Higgs boson, is the Higgs boson anything at all? Now, I agree with Maurice Cotterill. I think the Higgs boson is a conjecture. Some people will claim that CERN say they have found it. I think that's nonsense, right? Classical hard science in terms of physics, and to discover more about what I'm talking about with that, if you read Dr. Faustus, on the physics of Dr. Faustus by Klaus Johansson, or Klaus Johnson rather, who's the professor of applied maths at KIT in Stockholm, and Klaus he's what's, you know, he's called a climate denier and all this sort of stuff, but he's an applied mathematician. It's kind of like, you know, bring me the evidence, you know, let's have a look at it, let's check your workings. But the thing is that, as with all of the false narratives or the extended claims to truth that we're familiar with seeing now in the press, not least about COVID-19, they don't stand up to scrutiny, which is why they need to run and hide and censor people. And again, Epictetus touches on this in his Enchiridion when he says that you know, he who's deceived by a false proposition is the person deceived. The proposition itself is not harm. You know, a true proposition is a true proposition, whether someone has misunderstood it or not. You know, and that. So in terms of fake news and stuff like that, I mean, Epictetus is very good on that stuff. So anyway, I'm feeling quite invigorated. I think, in fact, I might give myself another shot in the arm and have a good read of Desiderata as well, or If by Kipling, or, you know, there are all sorts of there are lots and lots of interesting and what's the word, nourishing things that people can read as an antidote to the endless doom and gloom propaganda. And so I did a blog this morning as well, and so there's a link, for instance, to Pearce's How to Make Our Ideas Clear, which appeared in a popular science newspaper in the late 1800s, which is a remarkable, it's a fantastic thing. I mean, and again, there are certain things I revisit and read. You know, things like Matthew's Gospels or something like that, Maimonides' Guide for the Perplexed, Schumacher's Guide for the Perplexed, Small is Beautiful. So rereading things like An Ecology of Mind by Gregory Bates and stuff like that. Bit of Tolstoy, you know, some Kropotkin or something like that. You know, there's lots of stuff that people can read that is, you know, uplifting stuff, you know, not trying to support narratives, but getting down to well, you know, well, the meaning of life, really. In fact, I might do that as well. I might watch Meaning of Life by Monty Python or something, because, you know, that stuff is all, you know, above all, it's quite nice to have a laugh. There's not been many laughs in the press the last 9 months, have there? There's been quite a, you know, so anyway, that's where I'm at anyhow. What about your good self, sir?
Well, I am not going to be pretending to be anything other than completely superficial in my approach, which, as you probably know, on a Sunday morning or Saturday evening at around 8 or 9 o'clock, having a quick look and seeing what pops up on the Times website, because that's going to be the gambit for the rest of the week. I am bearing in mind the fact that there is this thing called the Great Reset, which I haven't done enough research on, but I don't suppose it's a good thing to just pretend isn't happening. And your opening comment about Carrie, I was one of the people who retweeted that too. It's interesting because if you look at the source of it, then you know you can make lots of arguments about it. But the fact is, it doesn't really matter where it came from, because I've known for ages that she's part of. Because when she left, it's not like she was an imperceptible person when she left. You know what we call politics, and because she was known she was known to be Boris's. Yeah, she'd become Boris's missus, and or whatever, and so yeah, there was this whole thing about the taxi, you know, John Warboys, the taxi, and all that stuff. But she was the assistant to Sajid Javid for a while. I think she. Now listen to this for what she must have seen. I think she may have been assistant to John Whittingdale as well, which is quite out there on the whole debauchery front of a minister. He was the one that was. They say he was being blackmailed. Yeah, so he was. I think he had been PPS to Mrs. Thatcher in the late 80s, early 90s. I think his brother is a paedophile, Charles Napier, but he and is inside. But there was an event where they basically, George Osborne made a joke about him being into Russian or Ukrainian models. It was a joke about, you know, a double play on economics and whores. Yeah. And everyone laughed. And I thought, my God, we've really gone there, haven't we? You know, because you wouldn't be able to get away with that under Thatcher. Yeah, you couldn't make such a joke. And so what people said was, of course, there must be, you know, tons of compromise on Whittingdale whilst he was the media minister, and you know he'd been on the media select committee at a time of Leveson and further mergers. Anyway, that's just that really almost doesn't matter. This is just a picture of Carrie, but when she left history, wherever she was, she took that job, the Oceania thing, which is funny because people saying Oceania, aren't you, to me? You know, whatever, Oceania. People would say, you know, 1984. Anyway, she took that job. The Republic of Oceania was published in 1698. Okay, well, you're always giving me the Orwells. It's the equivalent of a dystopian novel in Elizabethan times or whatever. But yeah. Oh, really? That's the history of that term. Okay. Well, yeah. So she works for Oceania, but the thing is, who else? I mean, I take it that there's more water on that than there is land. But you know, if you're looking at surface area. But I mean, you know who the other person was that's done lots of lobbying on oceans? I can give you a clue. She grew up near you, and her dad lived in a large council house. She was her. Maxwell. Yep. Maxwell. Currently residing in New Jersey, but I mean, you can find videos of her being fairly well spoken, speaking up for the oceans, which I know that. You know, Jimmy Savile used to do stuff on the water as well, didn't he? But anyway, Ted Heath as well, apparently. Yeah, exactly. So, Whispering Cloud or whatever his boat. Yeah. So just as you have, you know, the law of space, you have like the whole, you know, water thing. Anyway, so it's masquerades as conservation, but it's oceans, and it's these people who are doing what they're doing. So she's spoken at the UN several times about oceans and stuff like that. Can I ask you something, Ranjan, just about oceans? I've seen a lot of these Great Reset people talking. Really, I haven't. New World Order type people.
and I've noticed that a high proportion of them seem to have either a statue or a picture of either a dolphin or an orca preaching, like when they dive out the water and flop back in. Is there some symbolism to?
I can tell you this. I am no expert in any of this stuff, but you've heard of Robert Anton Wilson?
Yes.
The man who edited the letter section of Playboy magazine in the 60s and then went on to do the Illuminatus trilogy and all the other stuff, with the mailbag and everything like that. Well, on various covers, I mean, I've got 2 copies of the Illuminatus trilogy. I'm sure on one of them there's dolphins. There's a sort of dolphin, but it's kind of that. He will have done a book called. He might have done a book called Schrodinger's Cat or something like that as well. And as you know, all of the people that you just mentioned who are good for tickling the brain. Whether it's Kipling doing If or all of these other people, Bateson and all of these people. These people who worked out. I mean, I just looked up the Dr. Faustus of physics just now after you mentioned it. So all of these people who are able to find these gaps in the logic, as you say, the boundary conditions, the underlying assumptions, the people that can say, there are more gaps than there are, things that make perfect sense, just in case you're wondering. So, so I think that dolphin thing, I've seen it there. That's all I can say on the dolphin thing. And I've also seen millions and millions, well, no, that's probably not fair. I feel like there was a time where many girls who I knew went out and got a tattoo of a dolphin on their ankle or something like that. It's sort of like
okay.
it's kind of like the least aggressive tattoo, and placing that you can get. I mean,
okay,
dolphins on ankles was quite a trend for a while when I was 18. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it's something to do with the military. I have no idea. Like I say, but I just noticed it, and so I thought I'd ask if you've noticed the same thing, because it's occurred too many times not to have the dolphin thing. Yeah. So yes, so you got great. So I mean, ultimately, it would be naughty for me not to mention the Great Reset in anything I do. So I'm thinking of doing something, preparing something now, a little bit like that video that I did about 3 months ago, which went on for about 20 minutes. This time I'll try and do it much shorter so it can actually be uploaded into either Facebook or something like that. But going from this, so you've got the deep and the superficial. So on the completely superficial, you do remember that there was a time where David Cameron said, "Oh, the next big scandal will come from lobbying." It's famous. He's with his friend Lord Feldman, who's very close with, who made the chair of the Conservative Party or something like that. He's currently referred to as a lobbyist, is Lord Feldman. But in today's Sunday Times, right, and I'm not saying you should be paying attention to this, I'm just telling you what I've been seeing, okay? I'm not trying to convince you that it's important, okay? All right? I just want to make that clear in case you have a go at me for wasting your time. So basically, Gabriel Pogren, who I'm thinking of referring to him as a young man in a hurry. He's the one who did all of the anti-Semitism stories, right? So he should be fairly pleased because he's got rid of. Was there? He's got a book out about that he's done with something. Yeah. So today, he's the one who did the stories over the last 2 weeks on what's her name, Kate Bingham.
Right.
And I thought it was a bit confusing because first of all, he did the story because she's the one with the PR team that said, "Don't worry." No. They said you can't all get the vaccine. We're really sorry.
Oh yeah.
They used that line. So they did that in the FT about 6 weeks ago. That's just like government propaganda in the FT. And they said head of you can't all have the vaccine. Warren, head of UK task.
Yeah.
So that Warren was doing. Pogren says she's been showing investors in America online or something like that a list of the potential vaccines that the government could be buying. And so people say that's fucking insider trading, man. And then last week he did his scoop. He always calls it a scoop. He does his scoop on the PR bill. They said that she spent 670 grand on PR. Of course, that was the PR that was used to say warned head of task force in the first place to get everyone wanting the thing. And really,
you're breaking up, Ranjan.
On buying without getting buy-in on the vaccine. Okay, so is this better? Hello?
Yeah, it's better, yeah. On that, I saw a headline that the royal family are also not going to be given priority on the vaccine either. They're going to have to wait their term too.
I love it. You are good. You've got to tell me where you got that one. That's fucking brilliant. I mean, that's as close as getting Johnny Rotten to say, I'm the president of the UK. It's a republic. I mean, that's such constructive republicanism, you know, for the sake of the stock market. I love it. So the thing is that he did all of, and guess what he's done today? Oh no, the other thing was then in the week they said that she was stepping down. Okay, but the Times never said that she was stepping down in a headline. They never said we fucking got her. Yeah. So on the Monday they did more stories, and I thought, how many days will this go? And then on Tuesday they said, oh, she's stepping down in December. She was always going to. So I copied Gabriel.
It's odd, isn't it? What? I mean, if she's delivering the Build Back Better, get the vaccine stuff, right?
I didn't say that she's doing Build Back Better.
Harry's managed to nail Cummings, and I mean,
no, hold on. You've got to let me continue, Roger. You've got to let me continue because we're nearly there. So the Times never took credit for her going. Yeah, even on Times Radio, they said to Hancock, she's stepping down, isn't it? And then I included Gabriel Pogren saying they haven't even taken the credit for this. You know, brilliant work here, but they haven't even taken the credit because the FT put a headline saying she's stepping down, whereas the Times never did. They put it as the anti-penultimate paragraph in a story about something else. So they've done all of this work, all the running, and they don't get anything. So it really proves that, you know, the Times.
She was going anyway. Her job is stuff, which may be the coming.
No, but hold on. The thing is.
Right, I'm just going to stop that there. It's all breaking up a bit. I might upload it later. Anyone that's been watching, I don't think anyone has. Thank you.